The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor of my kitchen. My son Marcus's voice still echoed in my ears. "She's becoming a real burden, Sarah. It's time we put Mom in one of those places." The casual cruelty in his tone made my chest feel like it was caving in on itself. But before I tell you the complete story of how my world shattered and rebuilt itself, tell me where you're watching this story from in the comments below. And if you want to hear stories like this every day, don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with all our latest content. I had been washing dishes after another lonely dinner when the phone rang. Marcus, my pride and joy, calling from his business trip in Seattle with his wife Sarah. I'd hurried to answer, wiping soap suds on my apron, so grateful to hear from them after 3 days of silence. "Hi Mom, how are you holding up?" His voice had carried that familiar warmth that used to make my heart swell with maternal love. I'd settled into Robert's old recliner, the leather worn smooth from years of his evening reading sessions. "Oh, you know me, sweetheart. Just finished cleaning up after dinner and was about to catch up on my shows." I hadn't mentioned it was leftover casserole from 4 days ago, or that I'd been staring at Robert's photograph on the mantel for the better part of an hour, missing him so desperately it felt like drowning. "Are you eating enough, Mom? You know you can order groceries online now, right? Sarah showed me the app last time we visited." "I'm eating plenty," I'd interrupted gently, though I felt compelled to add. "I did have a little scare yesterday, though. Left the oven on after making cookies. Good thing I smelled something burning from the living room." There had been a pause. I could picture him frowning in that way he'd inherited from me, the same little crease between his eyebrows when he was worried. "Mom, maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly." "Marcus, I'm fine. Really, how's your conference going? You're in Seattle, right?" "Yes, the presentation went well today. Sarah's been handling most of the client dinners while I sit through these endless seminars about market analysis." He'd laughed, but it sounded forced. "Listen, Mom, I should probably get going. Sarah and I have drinks with some potential partners tonight." "Of course, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Mom. Take care of yourself, okay?" I'd heard the click, then rustling sounds. He must have dropped the phone in his briefcase, I thought, reaching to hang up. But then, voices drifted through the connection, muffled but clear enough through his phone's microphone. "Marcus, you see how she's deteriorating?" Sarah's voice, no longer the sweet daughter-in-law who called me Mom Margaret during visits. "She left the oven on yesterday? What if she burns down the house?" My hand froze on the receiver. Ice spread through my chest like I'd been plunged into Arctic water. "It's time for a nursing home, Marcus." Sarah's voice was cold, matter of fact. "She's becoming a real burden. And you know it. Your mom's a sweet woman, but she can't live alone anymore." The words hit me like physical blows. Burden. The house Robert and I had built together, where we'd raised Marcus, where every board and nail held our love story. "The house is worth at least $750,000 now," Marcus said, and I could hear the calculation creeping into his voice. "With Portland's market, we could probably get $800,000, maybe more." "Exactly." Sarah sounded pleased. "We could sell it, put her somewhere decent, but not too expensive, and finally get that condo downtown we've been looking at. The one with the river view." My son laughed. Actually laughed. "God, Sarah, you should have seen her tonight. So grateful just to hear from us. She has no idea we're planning this. The longer we wait, the more confused she'll get. We should move while she still trusts us completely." The phone finally slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the hardwood floor Robert and I had installed together 28 years ago. Every board laid with thoughts of our family's future. Every nail driven with love. I sat in the sudden silence of my empty house, staring at Robert's photograph. His eyes seemed to bore into mine, with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment. Warning. Or maybe just the terrible knowledge that comes to those who've already crossed over. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Robert's retirement gift to himself 12 years ago, ticked steadily in the growing darkness. Outside, the first spring crickets began their evening song in the garden I still tended, the roses Robert had planted for our 20th anniversary. Something cold and hard settled in my chest, replacing the warmth I'd felt hearing Marcus's voice just moments before. My hands, weathered from years of teaching third grade and caring for Robert during his illness, slowly curled into fists. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was confused, helpless, ready to be managed and discarded like an old piece of furniture. They were already spending my money, already planning their new life with my death as their windfall. But I wasn't dead yet, and I wasn't nearly as confused as they believed. I might be 72 years old, but my mind was sharp as the day I'd earned my teaching degree. And if Marcus thought he could manipulate his old mother, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, Robert's face watching me from the silver frame on the end table. The house felt different now, as if the walls themselves had heard my son's betrayal and were holding their breath, waiting to see what I would do next. My legs felt unsteady when I finally stood to turn on the lamp. The warm light fell across the living room. Robert and I had furnished piece by piece over 30 years of marriage. Each item chosen with care and saved for with sacrifice. The burgundy sofa where Marcus used to sprawl doing homework, while I graded papers at the dining table. The coffee table Robert had built in the garage, sanding it smooth, while Marcus played with his toy trucks at his feet. I walked to the Kit Thompson and opened the drawer where I kept important papers. My fingers found the folder I was looking for without conscious thought. 25 years of financial records I'd never thrown away because Robert always said, "You never know when you might need them, Lynn." Oregon State University tuition receipts. $52,000 over 4 years. I remembered those extra tutoring sessions I had taken on, coming home with chalk dust under my fingernails and lesson plans to grade until midnight. Robert would have dinner waiting and would rub my shoulders while I calculated how to afford Marcus's spring semester. "Margaret, you're working yourself to death," he'd said one night, watching me balance our checkbook at this very Kit Thompson table. "Marcus is lucky to have you. He deserves better than we had, Robert. He's bright enough for anything." Robert had kissed the top of my head. Just don't give him so much that he forgets where it came from. I should have listened. God, I should have listened to my husband's wisdom. The wedding receipts were there too. $28,000 for one perfect day. I'd told Marcus we could afford maybe $8,000, perhaps $10,000 if we stretched. But Sarah had cried, actually cried, about wanting her dream wedding. I'd worked summer school for 3 consecutive years, teaching remedial reading to earn the extra money. "Mom, you're the best mother in the world," Marcus had whispered during our dance, my hand on his shoulder, his tuxedo crisp against my navy dress. "I'll never forget what you've done for us." But he had forgotten. Just like he'd forgotten who co-signed his first car loan when his credit wasn't established. Just like he'd forgotten who made the calls to get him that marketing position when he was unemployed for 6 months after college. I found the bank statements from 18 months ago when Marcus lost his advertising job. Layoffs, he'd said, though the details were always vague. They'd moved in temporarily, just until he found something new. I'd never charged them rent. I'd paid the increased utility bills. Bought groceries for 3 adults instead of one lonely widow. Sarah would hug me and say, "Mom, Margaret, we'll pay you back when we get on our feet." Marcus would pat my shoulder and call me the most generous mother in Oregon. They'd been on their feet for over a year now, both working decent jobs, both making more money than Robert and I ever had. But they'd never mentioned moving out, never mentioned paying back the $12,000 they'd borrowed for their emergency car repairs and credit card payments. The anniversary dinner I'd paid for last month, minus $180 at that fancy steakhouse downtown, because Sarah said they, quote, to celebrate their success. The laptop I'd bought Marcus when his old one crashed, $1,400, that wiped out my emergency fund because he needed it for work presentations. Margaret's like a second mother to me, Sarah had told her friends at their last barbecue, her arm around my shoulders. I'm so lucky Marcus married into such a caring family. I'd been proud, actually proud, to be the generous mother-in-law, the woman who took care of her family no matter what it cost her. I'd basked in their gratitude, lived for their occasional phone calls and visits. Now I understood it had all been performance. Every hug, every "I love you, Mom," every grateful smile had been calculated manipulation, designed to keep me compliant, while they planned my disposal. I walked upstairs to Robert's and my bedroom, still unchanged after 18 months. His reading glasses folded beside the lamp, his cologne bottle half empty on the dresser. I opened the bottom drawer where we'd kept our important papers and pulled out the original house deed. Margaret and Robert Chen, purchased 1995. No liens, no co-signers, no complications. My name only now that Robert was gone. Standing there in the bedroom where Robert had spent his last days, surrounded by everything we'd built together, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp as broken glass, but underneath it something harder was forming. They wanted to put me away and sell my life's work. They thought I was too old, too confused, too grateful for their attention to fight back. I looked at Robert's photo on the nightstand, remembering his voice from all those years ago. Just don't give him so much that he forgets where it came from. Well, Robert, our son, had definitely forgotten. But he was about to remember that his old mother wasn't as helpless as he thought. I walked to my home office and pulled out the business card I'd kept in my desk drawer for 2 years. Margaret Sullivan, estate planning attorney. Robert had insisted we meet with her after his heart attack, just to make sure our affairs were in order. It was time for another consultation. This time, I'd be planning more than just my estate. I'd be planning my son's education and respect. The next morning, I walked through my house like a stranger seeing it for the first time. But instead of seeing home, I was seeing what Marcus and Sarah saw: square footage, market value, liquid assets waiting to be converted into their downtown condo dreams. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the granite countertop Robert had installed himself, working by lamplight after his day job at the engineering firm, because we couldn't afford to hire contractors. I'd picked out the pattern: speckled beige with veins of gold that caught the morning light just right. I'd made coffee on this counter every morning for 28 years, until Robert's heart condition made early mornings too difficult for him. I remembered the Christmas morning when 2-year-old Marcus had taken his first wobbly steps right here, from the refrigerator to my outstretched arms. Robert and I had both cried with joy, me scooping our son up and spinning him around while Robert scrambled for the camera. Our baby's walking in our house, I'd whispered through tears, in the house we built for him. The living room held 29 years of Christmas mornings. I could still see 5-year-old Marcus's face, lighting up at the side of the wooden train set. Robert had spent 3 months building in the garage, working in secret after Marcus went to bed. I'd sewn tiny conductor uniforms for his stuffed animals, made miniature cargo from cardboard and fabric scraps. "Mommy, it's just like a real railroad," Marcus had squealed. And it was. Robert had made it a perfect replica of the historic Oregon Railroad, complete with little tunnels and bridges that had cost him 6 months of weekend overtime. That bay window had cost us dearly too. I had seen it in a home decorating magazine and fallen in love with the idea of reading there in the afternoons when I wasn't grading papers. Robert had learned to cut angles he'd never cut before, measured and remeasured until his back ached from crawling around the frame. "Margaret, we can't afford this," Robert had worried when he saw me marking measurements on the wall. "You want it? You'll have it," he'd told me finally. "I'll make it work." I climbed the stairs to Marcus's old room, still painted the soft blue he'd chosen for his 14th birthday, still decorated with his high school baseball trophies and college acceptance letters I'd been too proud to take down. The room where I'd rocked him through feverish nights as a baby, where Robert and I had helped him with algebra homework at the small oak desk Robert had built to fit perfectly under the window. The master bedroom was the hardest. Robert's side of the bed still had his water glass on the nightstand, his bookmark still marking page 156 of the biography he'd never finish. I'd organized these walk-in closets with my own hands, custom designed to fit our clothes perfectly. Robert's shirt still hung there, still smelling faintly of his aftershave. This was the room where we'd planned our future, where we'd whispered about our dreams for Marcus, where Robert had died holding my hand while machines beeped softly around us. "Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you," he'd said near the end, his voice barely a whisper. "You're too generous, Lynn, too trusting. Promise me you'll take care of yourself first." I'd promised, but I hadn't kept that promise, had I? In my home office, I found the folder of construction photos I'd kept, Pictures of Robert laying the foundation in the spring of 1995, 29 years younger and 40 pounds stronger. Robert and his crew installing the framework, me in my hard hat bringing them lemonade on hot summer days, my belly just starting to show with Marcus. The financial records from those years told the story my photos couldn't. Second mortgage on our old apartment, personal loan from my sister, me taking on extra tutoring jobs to help with materials costs. We'd eaten pasta and vegetables from our garden for months, drove cars held together with determination and prayer. But we'd built this house with our sweat, our sacrifice, our love for each other, and for the family we were creating. And now my son, the baby who'd taken his first steps in this kitchen, the child who'd played in the yard I'd landscaped by hand, wanted to sell it all and put me away like an inconvenient piece of furniture. I picked up Margaret Sullivan's business card from my desk drawer. The edges were worn from 2 years of handling, but the phone number was still clear. Marcus and Sarah thought they were dealing with a confused old woman who'd be grateful for any scrap of attention they threw her. They thought I was weak, helpless, ready to hand over my life's work without a fight. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I dialed Margaret's number and listened to it ring, my hands steady as stone. Outside, the spring morning was bright and clear. The kind of day Robert used to love, the kind of day for new beginnings. Sullivan Law Offices. This is Margaret speaking. Miss Sullivan, this is Margaret Chen. You handled my husband's estate planning 2 years ago. I need to discuss something urgent about protecting my assets. Of course, Mrs. Chen. I remember you and Robert well. When would you like to come in? I looked around my home office, at the house deed lying open on my desk, at Robert's photo watching me with what I now recognized as encouragement. How soon can you see me? I'm afraid this can't wait. The law offices of Sullivan and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a restored Victorian building on Hawthorne Boulevard, the kind of place that specialized in helping regular people with real problems rather than impressing corporate clients. I'd chosen my best dress, the navy one Robert had bought me for Marcus's college graduation, and arrived 20 minutes early, my hands only slightly trembling as I signed in at the reception desk. Margaret Sullivan was exactly as I remembered her, mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and the patient demeanor of a woman who'd heard every family horror story twice. Her office was lined with law books and family photos, a husband, twin daughters in college caps and gowns, a golden retriever sprawled on a beach somewhere. Mrs. Chen, so good to see you again. Margaret poured coffee from a small machine in the corner, the rich smell filling the space between legal documents and filing cabinets. I was so sorry to hear about Robert. He was a wonderful man. Thank you. I accepted the coffee, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I need to discuss something delicate about my son and daughter-in-law. Margaret settled behind her desk, pen ready, legal pad open. I'm listening. I told her everything, the phone call, the overheard conversation, their plans to sell my house and warehouse me in a nursing home. Margaret's expression never changed, but I caught her shaking her head slightly when I described their eagerness to spend my money on their Riverview condo. Unfortunately, Mrs. Chen, this scenario is more common than you'd think. Margaret set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. Adult children often assume they know what's best for their aging parents, especially when valuable assets are involved. But they can't actually do anything, can they? I mean, legally? Let's start with the basics. The house is titled in your name only since Robert's passing, correct? That's right. Robert and I owned it jointly, but when he died, it transferred to me automatically. Then, legally speaking, your son and daughter-in-law have absolutely no claim to your property. They cannot sell it, cannot force you into a care facility, cannot make any decisions about your assets without your explicit consent. Margaret pulled a fresh legal pad from her drawer and began making notes. The house belongs to you, period. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by something sharper. So if I wanted to sell it myself, you could put it on the market tomorrow if you chose to. It's your property, your decision. Margaret looked up from her notes. May I ask why you're considering that option? I thought about Marcus's laugh when he'd called me a burden, about Sarah's cold calculation of my worth, about 29 years of sacrifice reduced to a real estate transaction. They think I'm helpless, confused. They think they can manage me like a piece of property. My hands clenched around the coffee cup. Maybe it's time I showed them exactly how sharp my mind really is. Margaret was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Portland's housing market is incredibly strong right now, especially in your neighborhood. Properties are selling within days, often for cash offers above asking price. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If you were serious about selling quickly, before your son and daughter-in-law return from their trip, how quickly could it happen? With the right buyer, and there are plenty of investors looking for properties like yours, we could have a sale completed within a week, maybe less. Margaret leaned forward. But Mrs. Chen, this is a major decision. Once you sell, there's no going back. I built that life with my husband, Ms. Sullivan. Every room holds our memories. Every improvement was made with love. I know exactly what I'm doing. We spent the next hour discussing practicalities, market value estimates, cash buyer networks, legal requirements for rapid sales. Margaret explained that she could have everything prepared within 24 hours if I was serious about proceeding. I work with several real estate agents who specialize in quick sales to investors, she said, pulling out her phone. There's one in particular, David Park, who has an excellent reputation and a network of cash buyers. Would you like me to call him? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment that would set everything in motion. Once I made this call, there would be no going back to being the grateful, manageable old mother Marcus expected. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. Call him now. Margaret dialed, her conversation brief and professional. David? It's Margaret Sullivan. I have a client with a property that needs to move quickly. Established neighborhood, immaculate condition, motivated seller. Yes, she can meet this afternoon. She hung up and smiled at me. David can be at your house at 3 p.m. for a preliminary assessment. He says the market is so hot right now that quality properties are selling within 72 hours. 72 hours. Marcus and Sarah would return from Seattle in 5 days, expecting to find their grateful old mother ready to be shipped off to their resort. The consultation fee is $300, Margaret said as I prepared to leave. If you decide to move forward, that applies toward my legal fees for the sale. I paid in cash from my purse, feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. Walking to my car in the spring sunshine, I felt my phone buzz. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time since his betrayal, I smiled. Let him call. Let him and Sarah make their plans about my future, my house, my life. They were in for the surprise of their lives. The phone kept buzzing as I climbed into my car. Margaret Sullivan's business card secure in my wallet, and a plan forming in my mind that would teach my ungrateful son exactly who he was dealing with. I had built my life from nothing once before. I could certainly tear it down and rebuild it on my own terms. The phone finally stopped ringing as I reached my driveway, but I knew Marcus would call back. He always did when he needed something from his old mother. This time he was going to get much more than he bargained for. By the time I unlocked my front door, confidence had replaced the tremor in my hands. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. It's your property, your decision. 29 years of doubt and second-guessing had lifted like Portland fog in the morning sun. I was brewing a fresh pot of coffee when the phone rang again. Through the Kit Thompson window, I could see it buzzing on the counter where I'd left it. Marcus's name glowed on the screen, and for the first time since his betrayal, I let myself smile. Let him worry for a moment. Let him wonder why his grateful old mother wasn't scrambling to answer. I poured myself a cup of coffee, took a deep breath, and picked up on the 6th ring. Mom, there you are. Marcus's voice practically sparkled with artificial enthusiasm. I was starting to worry when you didn't answer earlier. Sorry, sweetheart. I was out running some errands. I kept my tone warm, grandmotherly. How's Seattle treating you? Oh, you know how these business conferences are. But listen, I have the most wonderful news. He paused for dramatic effect. Sarah and I have been planning something very special for you. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles going white. Oh? We want to treat you to a vacation. You deserve some rest and relaxation after everything you've been through since Dad died." His voice carried that practiced sympathy I now recognized as manipulation. "There's this beautiful place we found. It's like a resort, but with medical staff on hand, just in case you need anything." A resort with medical staff. My jaw clenched so hard, I thought my teeth might crack. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. You really didn't need to go to such trouble for me." "Nonsense. Your family." Sarah's voice came through in the background. She must have been listening on speakerphone. "We've already made all the arrangements." "When were you thinking?" I managed, knowing full well they wanted me gone before they returned to claim their inheritance. "Well, we should be back by next Wednesday," Marcus said. "We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack some clothes and personal items. You know, the essentials." The essentials, not the photo albums Robert and I had lovingly arranged, not the furniture we'd chosen together. Just the essentials for an old woman being shuffled off to die. "Actually, Marcus, I have a surprise for you too, for when you get back." "Oh, Mom, what kind of surprise?" He sounded genuinely pleased, probably imagining I'd signed papers or made their job easier somehow. I walked to the bay window Robert had built for me, looking out at the garden I still tended, the porch swing where we'd spent countless evenings planning our future. "It's something I've been working on since our last conversation. I think you'll be very surprised." "You're so sweet, Mom. We'll talk about everything when we get home. Just get some rest and we'll take care of everything else." Sweet. He called me sweet while planning to steal my life. "I will, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Mom. See you Wednesday." The line went dead, and I set the phone down with hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. I walked to my home office and opened my laptop, the screen glowing to life with possibilities I'd never considered before. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I typed, "Real estate agents, Portland, Oregon." The search results filled my screen like ammunition in a war. One was finally ready to fight. I'd always been methodical. 35 years as a third-grade teacher had taught me to research thoroughly before making any decision. Tonight, that methodical nature would serve a different purpose. I clicked through agent profiles, comparing success rates and client testimonials like I used to compare curriculum suppliers. Laurelhurst, Hawthorne, Pearl District, neighborhoods where houses sold for the kind of money Marcus and Sarah were already spending in their dreams. One name kept appearing in the top results. David Park, 38 years old, specialized in quick sales, averaged 15 days from listing to closing. His photo showed a professional smile and confident eyes, the kind of man who could make things happen fast. His testimonials were exactly what I needed to see. David sold our house in 4 days. Cash buyer lined up within 24 hours. Smooth closing, no complications. I stared at his direct phone number, prominently displayed beneath his credentials. This was it. The moment that would set everything in motion. Once I made this call, there would be no going back to being the grateful, manageable old mother my son expected. Robert's photo on my desk seemed to be watching me. I could almost hear his voice. "Margaret, are you sure about this?" I was sure. More sure than I'd been about anything since his funeral. I dialed David Park's number with steady fingers. "David Park, Park Real Estate, how can I help you?" "Mr. Park, my name is Margaret Chen. I'm interested in selling my house quickly. How fast can these things actually happen?" "Well, Mrs. Chen, that depends on several factors. But with the right property and pricing strategy, I've closed deals in as little as a week with cash buyers." "What kind of timeline are you looking at?" "A week." My heart hammered against my ribs. "That fast?" "Absolutely. Portland's market is incredibly hot right now, especially for well-maintained properties in established neighborhoods. Can you tell me a bit about your house?" I looked around my kitchen, seeing it through a buyer's eyes for the first time. 2-story, 800 square feet, built in 1995, Laurelhurst area. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I've maintained it well. My late husband did most of the work himself over the years. David's voice sharpened with interest. "That sounds exactly like what several of my investors are looking for. Original owner, well-maintained, established neighborhood. Those are premium selling points." Would you be interested in a property assessment? How quickly could you come by? I can be there this afternoon if you're available. Say 3 o'clock. I glanced at the clock. It was just past noon. 3 o'clock works perfectly. After I hung up with David Park, I sat in the sudden quiet of my kitchen, the magnitude of what I'd set in motion beginning to settle in my chest. In 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the house Robert and I had built together, assigning dollar values to our memories. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning obsessively, old habits from my teaching days, when I'd insist the classroom be spotless for parent conferences. I dusted the bay window, straightened the throw pillows on the couch, made sure every surface gleamed. But this cleaning felt different. I wasn't preparing for guests. I was preparing for an execution. At exactly 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath that carried the scent of Robert's aftershave still lingering in the hallway closet, and walked toward the front door. My hand trembled slightly as it closed around the brass doorknob Robert had installed himself 12 years ago. Beyond this door waited either my salvation or my damnation. I turned the handle and opened the door to my future. David Park looked exactly like his photo. Professional but approachable, late 30s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of successful deals. He carried a leather portfolio and tablet, and the moment he stepped inside, his eyes went wide. Wow! He stopped in my entryway, his gaze traveling up the crown molding Robert had installed by hand to the hardwood floors we'd selected together. Mrs. Chen, this is exactly what I was hoping for. I watched him take in the details, the way the afternoon light streamed through my bay window, the seamless flow from living room to dining room that Robert had achieved by removing a load-bearing wall and installing a support beam. His appreciation was genuine, professional. You weren't kidding about maintaining this place. He pulled out his tablet and started taking photos. These hardwood floors throughout, original? Installed them ourselves in 1997. Robert wanted something that would last, so we went with 3/4-inch solid oak. I found myself falling into the familiar rhythm of discussing our work, proud despite everything that was happening. And this kitchen? David stopped at the granite countertop, running his hand along the edge. Custom installation, every inch. I picked the pattern, said the gold veining reminded me of sunlight. My voice caught slightly. Robert spent 3 weekends getting the measurements perfect. David was typing notes on his tablet, photographing the custom cabinets, testing faucets and outlets with the thoroughness of someone who knew what buyers wanted. Mrs. Chen, I have to be honest with you. In my 12 years doing this, I rarely see properties maintained to this standard. I'm a retired teacher. My husband was an engineer. We believe in doing things right the first time. It shows. He gestured toward the living room. May I? I nodded, following him as he admired the open floor plan, the built-in bookcases flanking the fireplace, the way my decorating choices had turned our construction project into a home. This bay window, custom work? Built it for me. I wanted a reading nook. I could picture myself there with my mystery novels and afternoon tea, my reading glasses perched on my nose during those precious quiet moments after school. David was taking measurements now, his excitement barely contained. Mrs. Chen, I need to show you some comparable sales. He pulled up listings on his tablet. Similar properties in this area have been selling for $720,000 to $820,000. My chest tightened. That was more than Marcus and Sarah had estimated in their cruel conversation. But given the condition and custom features of your home, I'm thinking we price it at $780,000. That should move it quickly while getting you top dollar. $780,000. I sat down heavily in my reading chair, the number spinning in my head. That much? I managed. Mrs. Chen, you're sitting on a gold mine. Properties like this don't come on the market often, especially not in this condition. David's voice carried the confidence of someone who knew his business. I actually have an investment group that's been looking for exactly this type of property. What kind of investment group? They specialize in high-quality rental properties in established neighborhoods. They pay cash, no financing contingencies, no repair negotiations. They can close in 7 business days. 7 business days. Marcus and Sarah would return from Seattle in 5 days, expecting to find their grateful, manageable mother ready to be shipped off to their resort. What's the catch? Why so fast? David smiled. No catch. Cash means no loan delays, no appraisal contingencies that could kill the deal. They do their own inspections. But frankly, your house is in better shape than most new construction I see. I looked around the living room where Marcus had built his first Lego cities, where Robert and I had hosted birthday parties and quiet Sunday mornings reading the newspaper together. When would I need to be out? Standard contract gives you 30 days after closing, but they're flexible if you need more time. The main thing is getting clear title and completing the paperwork. I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone calling me sweet while planning to steal my life. I thought about Sarah's cold calculation reducing me to a burden to be managed. I thought about Robert's warning about being too generous, too trusting. Let's do it. David's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine excitement. Excellent choice, Mrs. Chen. Let me call them right now. I watched him dial, heard him describe my property with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found buried treasure. Laurelhurst area, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features throughout. He ended the call with a broad smile. They want to move forward immediately. I can have the initial contracts ready by tomorrow morning. The sun was setting through my bay window, casting golden light across the room where I'd just agreed to sell 29 years of my life. But for the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something that had been missing for too long. Control. How does 9 a.m. sound? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I realized David was waiting for an answer that would change everything. 9 a.m. sounds perfect. The next 6 days passed in a blur of signatures, inspections, and quiet satisfaction. David Park proved to be as efficient as promised. By Thursday morning, I had signed the sale documents, and $780,000 minus closing costs sat securely in my new bank account at Oregon Community Credit Union, an institution that specialized in protecting seniors' assets from financial exploitation. I'd also found my new home, a charming one-bedroom apartment in a senior community called Sunset Gardens, complete with a library, garden club, and residents who appreciated good conversation over morning coffee. The deposit and first 3 months, rent had barely made a dent in my newfound wealth. Tuesday morning, I'd hired a locksmith to change every lock in the house. New keys, new codes, new beginning. The brass hardware Robert had chosen was replaced with brushed silver, modern, secure, and completely unfamiliar to anyone who used to live there. Wednesday, I'd packed my essentials: Robert's photos, my jewelry box, our wedding album, and the novel I'd been saving to read in retirement. Everything else, the furniture that told our story, the Kid Thompson where I taught Marcus to cook, the living room where we'd celebrated every milestone, would belong to the new owners along with the house. By Wednesday evening, I was settled into my new apartment, sipping tea by a different window, watching a different sunset. My phone sat silently on the small dining table. I'd disconnected the landline and gotten a new cell number that Marcus didn't know. Thursday brought the final piece of my plan. I drove to an electronics store and purchased a small surveillance camera, the kind worried parents use to monitor babysitters. Wireless, motion-activated, with a smartphone app that would let me watch from anywhere with internet access. That afternoon, I let myself into my former house, one last time, using the garage door opener I'd never given Marcus. The house felt different now, no longer mine, but not yet theirs either, like a stage set waiting for the final act. I positioned the camera in the front hall, angled perfectly to capture anyone entering. Then I wrote my letter, choosing each word with the precision I'd once used for parent conferences when discussing a child's disappointing behavior. Dear Marcus and Sarah, I wrote in my careful teacher's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you've discovered that your keys no longer work. That's because this house no longer belongs to you, or to me. I heard your phone conversation about putting me in a nursing home because I'm becoming a burden. I heard you calculating how much money you'd make selling my house. $800,000, I believe you estimated. You were close. It actually sold for $780,000, which is now safely deposited in my new bank account. I've moved to a place where I'm appreciated, not tolerated. Your belongings have been packed and are being stored at Portland Moving and Storage on Division Street. You have 30 days to claim them. I gave you everything I had for 32 years. You repaid me by planning to warehouse me so you could steal my life's work. I hope the lesson was worth the cost. Love, Mom. I taped the envelope to the inside of the front door at eye level, where they couldn't possibly miss it. Friday morning arrived bright and clear. Through my new apartment window, I watched joggers in the park across the street, couples walking dogs, people living normal lives while I waited for justice to unfold 20 miles away. At 4:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app and watched a familiar black SUV pull into the driveway of my former house. My heart hammered as Marcus stepped out, stretching after the long drive from Seattle. Sarah emerged from the passenger side, both of them moving with the casual confidence of people coming home to claim their inheritance. I watched them approach the front door, Sarah fishing in her purse for keys while Marcus handled their luggage. She inserted her key into the lock I'd had changed. The key didn't turn. "That's strange," her voice came through my phone speaker. "My key's not working." Marcus tried his key, then the back door, then the garage remote. Nothing. I watched confusion turn to concern, then to panic as they realized someone had changed every lock. Finally, Marcus boosted Sarah through the Kit Thompson window I'd deliberately left unlocked. She opened the front door from inside, and both of them stopped dead when they saw my envelope. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it. I leaned forward, watching their faces change from confusion to shock to horror. "She sold the house," Sarah whispered, then screamed. "How could she do this to us?" Marcus snatched the letter, reading it twice as if the words might change. "That manipulative old. She was playing us the whole time. $780,000, Sarah was crying now. That money was supposed to be our future." "Well, she's right about one thing," Marcus said bitterly. "We're homeless. Our lease expires Monday, and we spent our deposit on this damn Seattle trip." I watched them fight in my former living room, blaming each other for underestimating their old mother. I watched them storm out, leaving Marcus alone with my letter, his head in his hands. I turned off the camera and walked to my small kitchen, where I opened a bottle of wine. A nice Pinot Noir that would have been an extravagance in my old life but was now just Tuesday evening. Outside my new window, the sun was setting over the park, painting everything golden. My phone showed 17 missed calls from unknown numbers, probably Marcus trying to reach me from different phones. I deleted them all without listening and blocked each number. For the first time in 18 months, I felt completely free. I was nobody's burden, nobody's inheritance, nobody's problem to solve. I was Margaret Chen, retired teacher, with $780,000 in the bank, and the rest of my life stretching ahead like an unmarked page. Marcus had wanted to put me away to claim my house. Instead, he'd lost both his mother and his inheritance in a single afternoon. Some lessons, I reflected, sipping my wine as the first stars appeared, are worth exactly what they cost.